Sand dunes have long been the favorite place for stories and tales of desert deaths. And it was in the dunes in 1913 that Pete Busch met his end. He was in a new contraption used for desert travel, the automobile.
Pete Busch and his two brothers had really been responsible for the great growth in Rhyolite. So he had gotten a new car, and he decided to drive it into Death Valley in July of 1913. And there was another man who came with him, the chauffeur. So somewhere along the way, his car got bogged down in the sand, and he got out, his chauffeur got out, and he was leading the way across the desert, and it caught up with him. The dehydration, the water loss was just such that he started apparently singing and dancing a jig going across the desert, and the young chauffeur who was with him knew he was in trouble then. When he saw Pete behaving like this, kind of like a lunatic, then he was really worried because he didn't know the desert at all. He was dependent upon Pete to get him where they were going. Well, in the meantime, people had wired to Rhyolite, so they did send a rescue party out. And sure enough, they found Pete, and he had already died. The chauffeur wasn't with him. It wasn't until the next day that they actually found the chauffeur, who had managed to get to a spring and find shelter for himself and water, and so he survived. But Pete passed away, and it was a day that would later be recorded as the hottest day ever recorded in Death Valley history. It was 134 degrees that day.
Okay, if you were hiking out here on your own and you were out of water and you came onto an area like this, obviously there's some green up there. Okay, now that's your first tip-off. In other words, there's some light green down here, but there's a lot of light green around. But if you look further up, there's even darker green, indicating, it's indicative of water being sucked up from the bottom, from a water table, without expending a whole lot of energy. You would trek up there and you would search around. Just take your time. Don't hustle. You're burning up a lot of energy, I'm up to a rock face. It's a little dry fall. There's going to be any water at all. Dry. Dry. Nothing wet. Like I say, it's a gamble. Very dry, very warm. I think it would even give me a indication to dig. But still, we got insects. As long as we got insects, that means there's water somewhere. My hands and knees crawling in. Holy mackerel. We got water. Holy mackerel. There's a little water hole in there. It's cold. It's cold. There's your water right there. I mean, it's not going to hold in my hand, but you can see there's water. And that would save a life right there. Now, if I had a film canister, I could probably get more, obviously. But just by licking my fingers, we got water. Following a game trail end of where it actually tunneled into the brush, and we found a pool of water about 5-6 inches across, 2 or 3 inches deep. It was cool, it was sweet, and it was super. It's water that I would drink. It's a lifesaver. It's our payoff.
For a safe trip to the desert, some preparation is important.
You need your water, you need your food. If you're going in a vehicle, your vehicle should be in good maintenance. You should be paying attention as much as you can to weather conditions. Be prepared.
The vehicle must be in tip-top shape. A spare tire, maybe even 2. Carry a couple of 5-gallon water jugs, adequate food, and then adequate clothing. And if something goes wrong with either yourself or your car, to know the shortest way to get to where medical help can be obtained. So maps are an essential part of planning for a desert trip.
Most important, take a cell phone. We've got an advantage that the early desert travelers didn't have. Take plenty of provisions, more water than you think you could possibly need. There's strength in numbers, so if you can, go with friends, preferably friends with rugged vehicles, good maps, and a close knowledge of the country. But remember that you can't count on anyone to pull you out. When you're in the desert, we're on our own, and we always have been.